For decades, people have tried to understand the unexplained. Lights in the sky, moments that don't seem to fit within what we think reality is supposed to be. But for some, it doesn't stay at a distance. It becomes personal. Experiences that happen up close, moments that are difficult to explain, things seen, felt, or sensed that don't easily fall into any one category. Not just something out there, but something that seems to cross into everyday life. And for those who go through it, the question isn't just, what is it? It's, why is it happening at all? Today's conversation explores that space between perception and reality, between experience and explanation. Joining us today is Jon Majerowski, someone who has had a series of unexplained personal experiences that he's been trying to understand, and whose story touches on what many would call part of a much larger phenomenon.
How you doing? Nice to meet
Good,
you.
man. How are you? You as well, man. Thanks for reaching out.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you. I'm sure you get all kind of people hitting you up. So,
You
uh,
should see my DMs, dude. It's a fucking nightmare.
yeah,
I could write a book on the DMs that I.
I can't imagine, but I also feel like it could be a good problem to have because you probably get contacted by some pretty interesting people.
Yeah, I soak it all in and just kind of take it all as as for what it is, and then kind of sort it out. And sometimes you go back years and go, "Holy shit, that guy wasn't crazy." You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Well, so tell me about years ago. How did you get to where you are now? Like, how did it all start for you? Like, can you kind of give us a little
Yeah,
backstory?
yeah, for sure. Let's see here. Let me turn that up a little bit. How's that? Is that like you can probably hear fine?
Yeah, I
Turn
got I
turn
got
it.
pretty good audio on my side, so
Okay. Yeah. That's cool. It's just not coming through. My voice isn't coming through there. So as long as I sound cool to you, I can hear you fine. But
okay.
as long as I sound okay, that's all right by me.
All right.
Um, yeah, man. So wow, where did it all start, or where did it start for where did you find me? How about that? How did you
Uh,
find me, dude?
so yeah, so interesting. I kind of like a lot of us, just
Hmm.
on X.
Yeah,
Obviously one of my more favorite topics is the UFO phenomenon and all that stuff. So I kind of constantly perusing on there and I'm looking at
for
people's
sure.
posts. So obviously, the more interested you are in stuff, that kind of what floods your feed.
Of
And I
course.
just so happened to see one of your posts. I can't really remember. I think it was about your book actually,
Oh, rad.
which I want to talk about a little bit later.
Of course.
And at the time, I didn't know much about you or anything like that.
Right.
So I kind of just looked into you a little bit, and I didn't want to look into you too deeply because I kind of wanted to come into this a little bit green, so we can,
Right.
I can kind of have the conversation flow a little bit easier.
For sure,
And
man.
yeah, so but anyway, so what I kind of saw was like really interesting to me, and I kind of
Cool.
I'm kind of starting off with this podcast thing, and I'm
Yeah,
just
yeah.
looking for people that are have interesting stories to tell, not just on the UFO topic because I feel like
Right.
there's a lot of alternate topics that need to be touched up upon, but the UFO topic is one that is personally important to me. So, but anyways, that's kind of how I found you, and then I just randomly commented underneath, and
Yeah,
you were kind enough to get back to me, and
for sure, man.
so I really appreciate that. So,
Yeah, of course, dude. Yeah, no, thank you, man. Yeah, it's a jungle out there, to be honest. I mean, it's just UFO Twitter is it's a mixed bag of intel agents, bots, grifters, like a legitimate experiencers that are out there looking for answers. There's researchers, there's scientists. I mean, it's just pretty much everybody, right, from all walks of life. So it's interesting to see how it's all evolved over the past I don't know, 5, 6 years or something, as long as I've been kind of involved in it. I got into the same like everybody else, right? Experiencer, research, trying to figure out what was going on. And it was kind of like an outlet, right? Because you could interact with all these people like real time. That's what, Twitter X kind of is. It's kind of, for that, it's kind of like the town square, where you can just, literally, like you said, reach out to somebody, and if they reach out to you, cool. I've had some experiences with some people, authors, and some people that you're just like, holy shit, that you wouldn't think would be talking to you, but they are. And that's kind of cool because it kind of puts everybody in the level playing field, and
Mm-hmm.
and it's interesting to see how that evolves. So yeah, I got involved. Like I said, it's probably about 6, maybe a little bit longer than that. And I was out there and just commenting from my perspective on things, I guess, being a Freemason and all that kind of, it's a different, I guess I was told it's a different type of, I don't know, perspective. I think that people didn't really have at that, that were at least on there talking about it. And a guy named James Iandoli from Engaging the Phenomena, amazing podcast, reached out to me and was like, "Hey man, I think you should do a podcast." And I'm like, "No, really?" He's like, "Yeah." He's like, "Dude, you've been doing this stuff. He's like, I like all your tweets and I like where your research is at and all this stuff." I'm like, "Really?" He's like, "Yeah, dude, I'll help you." So he literally like held my hand, helped me get started back in like 2020, something like that. And I was like, "Okay, cool, I'm gonna do it." And at that point, it was like after 2017, after the whole New York Times thing, and I was convinced they weren't offing people anymore. That they weren't like showing up in bands and hauling people away. So I was like, yeah, I'm going to just be public. I'm not going to hide behind a pseudonym. I'm just going to come out and just do it. And just, kind of like Lazar did when he first came out, he's not going to hide. I'm just going to be out there and just say what I'm saying.
So
And
was that article kind of a relief to you then?
yeah, I think at that point, because literally up to that point, people would just get disappeared.
Yeah.
Or they'd have talking to. Somebody would come and talk to you and say, "Hey, maybe you shouldn't be doing this," or even worse, they'd show you pictures of your family or your kids and tell you, "Hey, you got to stop what you're doing, right? Because if not, if you want something to happen, and that kind of shit." Up until when McCaslin disappeared, General McCaslin disappeared, like about 4 weeks ago now or something. Up until that point, and then everybody started putting the connections between everybody else. It's circulated with that, those 7 or 8 people.
Mm-hmm.
I really thought up until that point that they'd stop doing that, but apparently it doesn't look like it. I mean, I could be completely wrong, and there could be 7, people that are connected or loosely interconnected in the same military intelligence complex that aren't, the disappearances aren't related, but come on.
Yeah.
Right?
So I, just to clarify for people, because I know I have some people that aren't really into this topic. They're kind of, it's kind of why I'm doing it too, because I feel like, bringing more awareness towards this topic, because I think it's the most important topic that we have going in our human history. A lot of people aren't very aware of it at all.
Right.
And so like you said, mentioned about 4 weeks ago, there was a general that went missing, and a lot of people speculate, he was connected with the phenomenon or knew some things to some degree. And over the weeks, like you said, it was like 7 scientists. Were they all scientists? Is that correct?
I think some of them, yeah, I think a lot of them were, or former military, somebody connected to that deep state kind of Black Project kind of world, right? Where it was you come in your military and then you go out and you work for the civilian life for one of the aerospace companies or something like that. The labs, and do the same kind of work, but in the private sector. And McCaslin, and there was for sure a woman they had worked with. She had disappeared a year before. Same kind of deal. She was hiking. She was 30 feet behind her friends, was waving. They turned around. She was gone. Other people, the same kind of MO. They just left their house without their normal things like their phones, their keys, their wallets, their glasses, things like that. They just disappeared.
That's interesting. That almost sounds like, because I didn't know the circumstances behind that. That almost sounds very similar to that documentary that came out a few years ago, The Missing 411. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah.
And
for sure.
A lot of people mentioned a lot of the similar things like that. They were finding things like glasses or shoes and things like that. So, as I kind of explore this topic more, I realized that there's extremes on both ends, right?
Yeah.
But the truth is somewhere in the middle, but it's all kind of a puzzle piece. So if you just take a little bit from everybody, you can kind of see a bigger picture. So I think that, because I think the phenomena, all these weird things that happen, I think there's a connection to all of it.
Of course.
But everybody has like their specialty that they want to focus on, and then they kind of brush other people's stuff,
Aside, I've been
to
yelled
the
about it for
side.
years. Yeah, the Bigfoot people don't talk to the UFO people. The ghost people don't talk to the Bigfoot people or the UFO people. Like the
Which it
people
could
with
all
near
be the
death
same
experiences
thing.
don't take it. It's all the
Yeah,
same thing. Yeah.
yeah,
It's just a different lens.
yeah, for
That's my
sure.
research.
Well, so
Hmm.
with that, can you talk about your experience? Because one of the main reasons
Yeah.
I wanted to have you on is because you're an experiencer, and I haven't had an experience. Well, sort of. I had Mark Christopher Lee on, and
Yep.
he had an experience when he was younger that but it seems like your experience, not to dismiss what he experienced, but your experience seems to be a lot more in depth. And so if you could talk about that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and I really didn't like until I started doing the research for the book. Like I've I've had these experiences my whole life, and I like we were just talking about. Like I didn't put it together as far as it all being one thing. When I was a kid, I was probably 4 or 5. Had an experience of you know, basically what you'd call a ghost. Full on entity of a man in the doorway. When I was a kid, scared the shit out of me. Ran and told my dad. My dad was like, "Oh yeah, that was the neighbor of the guy." Like I explained perfectly what this guy looked like. And my dad was like, yeah, that's the guy that next door died. He was named Jerry Brown. He died like a couple of years before that. And he was like, that's crazy that you saw him, but kind of brushed it off because you're a kid, he didn't want to freak me out, right? He told me it wasn't a big deal. Later in life, he told me, oh yeah, that place was haunted. I
Uh,
saw this stuff that happened. But as a kid, he's like, oh no, you're just imagining stuff. And then, I had another experience with another ghost, like it kind of resembled the white lady, the lady in white experience as well. Top of the stairs kind of thing was kind of a corporal like really experience there. And then another experience, same kind of deal with an entity. I was in Dayton, Ohio, working at a radio station there at the time, and another black figure passed in front of me, and I was, alone, kind of like watching the building at night. And all this, like, believe it or not, I keep saying it, but like all this stuff, I finally had to put it all together and I put it in the book because it kind of, for me, started clicking after doing all this, going, wow, man, this is like legit been happening to me my whole life. And I just haven't known that, this ghost thing is really related to the UFO thing, related to the white lady thing, related, it's like, it's kind of all the same consciousness based activity. So I saw that thing, and I met a lady at the time there. I think I was probably 17 or 18 years old, and I was like just freaked out. And there's a lady that's named Chris Woodyard, and she writes the Haunted Ohio series book. So she's written like, she's like a medium, like all this stuff, and she goes these places and writes books about haunted places and people and experiences and stuff. And I was kind of freaking out. We were off the air, and I told her about it. She's like, "You can make it stop." And I'm like, "What do you mean you can make it stop? You should just tell it to go away." I'm like, really? She's like, yeah, just tell it like with, emotion behind it. Just tell it, leave me alone, go away. I don't want to deal with you. And it was shortly after that I had sleep paralysis, I guess is what you would call it, like a episode of sleep paralysis where it's completely frozen in the same building. It was like 1800s building in Dayton, and just frozen at the couch. And there was like an atomic clock, so I watched it, and it must have been over an hour. It was like an hour and a half or something crazy of just not being able to move, like trying to will myself everything I could possibly do to throw myself off of this couch, right, and just completely frozen and just seeing the most bizarre shit and not being able to do anything about it. Like time and space didn't exist, and if I didn't have that atomic clock, I wouldn't have any rational idea of what was going on. But like after that, I just got up because I knew something was. It was just wasn't happening. Like I never had that experience before, and I honestly never had it since. But as soon as I got up, I just screamed like, "Just leave me the fuck alone!" Like that's it. I'm done. Fuck off. Like I'm done. And it took a long time. It was probably like another, I don't know, 10, 15 years or something before I came, like maybe 10 years, something like that I gave a shit anymore and like was maybe not even scared enough or knew enough to like go, okay, well, maybe there's something to this, right? Like maybe I should open myself up. And opening yourself up was a lot harder than it was, believe it or not, than for me to turn it off, if that makes any sense. I don't know why that makes sense, but for me, it was just like, when it went away, it was pretty much done. I mean, of course I had weird synchronicities, I had weird things like that, but I didn't have like non-human entities like in my face, at that point anymore, right?
did did
Which
did that so that's interesting bringing that up because like you so throughout your youth or growing up, you kind of had all these experiences, and then you told, how
yeah,
old were you when you told it to go away?
I was probably like 18, 19 years old. Yeah.
Okay. And then Did you kind of feel a little bit empty after that for a while? Like, could that shift for you? Like, you were like, now I'm not having these experiences. Did that feel off to you?
No, I don't think so. I think it was kind of liberating because I think it was the
Okay.
burden at the time, because it was like, well, how do you, I mean, because the stigma that we as society puts on there, all of this, right, is so strong that if you tell people about any of these things, half of the people are going to be like, dude, that dude's crazy. Like, I don't want to, like that dude's off his meds or whatever, tinfoil hat or whatever. And the other people will be like, oh yeah, I had that experience too, right? But there's that fine line. I mean, the people you can't really tell. I mean, through my entire life now, I I'm almost convinced that everybody on the planet has had some kind of weird anomalous experience, no matter what, whatever it is. Pick your poison, Bigfoot, whatever, right? Come up with anything, right? Knowing when the phone's going to ring before it rings, or knowing when somebody passed away that you loved, or you know what I mean. Like any of those things, you can chalk it up to synchronicity and all those other things. But I'm almost convinced everybody has. But I think that we've done such a good job at dissuading people from talking about it publicly and opening up about it because we put the stigma aside of it. And that was, directed, especially the UFO thing was, the Robinson panel in 53. That's what they said to do. Make everybody crazy. We're going to, push the thing away so that we can study this in public or private. So the public, we're just going to tell the public they're nuts. And we're going to just go behind the scenes and just study this in private so we can figure it out, and that's literally what we're still underneath to this day.
Hmm.
And I mean, that thing was only declassified in like the 70s, right? That was the program from 53. So we're still a bit under that, but that paints a wide brush with all these other things as well, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. I totally agree with you. Did that, like, having those experiences growing up, did that shape your belief system? Was your family like religious, and that kind of like did that persuade you in any way, or did that push you away from certain beliefs? Like, did that shape like how you looked at the world?
Well, I mean, yes and no. I mean, I guess so. I was raised Catholic, right? So my both sides of my family, Catholic, just the whole thing, right? Church on Sunday, CCD, Catechism Wednesday, kind of thing. When I was a kid, because I went to public school, and I kind of despised it. The older I got, the more I kind of looked at it with disdain because it seemed like it was either leaving out a big piece of the puzzle or not even addressing it, or you can talk about the Holy Ghost, but if I talk about a ghost, I'm going to be labeled as
Hmm.
a nut job.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's a good point.
Right.
That's a good point.
So like, how does that work for everybody, right? So yeah, so then as I've gotten older, obviously I've looked at things from a different lens, I would say, to understand like spirituality is different than a religion. But yeah, I think that was interesting to see that there was really no solace in any of that. I was fortunate enough that my dad um, also had experiences with UFOs, in the 50s, with like a large group of people in Toledo, Ohio. He was working at a gas station, and it was one of those things where it seemed like a movie scene, where like cars just all stop because there's a big silver, disc, or kind of a cigar shaped disc, not a blimp, but like something massive in the sky low, where pretty much traffic stopped, everybody stopped what they're doing, everybody's coming outside staring up at this thing for like a long time, broad daylight, and then it just goes up, takes off, and
Wow.
that kind of changed him. And then he had another experience in the 70s after that with the neighbors as well, like a disc hovering over the house, over the neighborhood. And like when I grew up, he told me these things, and it was like a matter of fact. I mean, my dad's not going to lie to me, he's not going to make this shit up. So like as a kid, you're like, yeah, dad, he had this experiences, he's not lying about it, it's not bullshit. I mean, he's not trying to prove anything to me. So I just grew up thinking that UFOs are real. Like, why wouldn't they be? My dad's not gonna, so he tried to figure it out himself because he's like had these experiences with these things going. I don't know what the hell this was. So in the 80s, they had like the UFO TV mailer VHS tapes. You can like get a VHS tape of somebody doing a lecture, like magazine. So we had that growing up, and for me, it was just like a normal thing, but it was still on the fringe, obviously, right? Still even now, but
Hmm.
so that kind of shaped my belief system in that way because it was just from his perspective. It was like I've seen it, so
Yeah. Well, so
yeah, for sure.
you're very fortunate that you had a father that was very open-minded, especially from the previous generation, because everything was taboo and you don't talk about those things, and
Right.
stick with a certain religion and all that stuff. And so luckily you didn't have to kind of hide behind anything. So that must
Yeah.
have been
Yeah.
really big for you.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, my dad was like, still, he's like, he's going to be 86. Like the, and he was a 50s greaser guy growing up, right? And, he's had me when he was 40, so it was a different age group, right? So you're right, but even from his generation, it was still kind of taboo, and it was still that's the Robinson panel generation where you're just
Hmm.
tinfoil hat crazy. But I honestly think that most people, unless they have an experience, they can't fathom the other side of it, right? You just
Hmm.
can't put yourself in the position. I mean, you can anecdotal evidence, people tell you, but unless you've had your own kind of experience with the unknown, I don't think that people really can, let that click for them to make it be, acceptable, I guess, or accepting, in my mind anyway.
Yeah.
I've experienced that firsthand for sure.
Yeah. I also think a lot of people don't want to challenge their own beliefs,
Of course.
in fear of getting ridiculed or, I also, so, it, kind of tie it back in, you had that moment where you were and sleep paralysis, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you know, there is this stigma, like, oh, it's called sleep paralysis, and people are scared, and then they see these things, and you know, but if you actually do a lot of research into like say astral projection and like what Robert Monroe
Yep.
studied at the Monroe, and he created the Monroe Institute and everything, to be able to astral project, most people get into a sleep paralysis state, right? But
Hmm.
people have that fear, so they're not able to project themselves out. But if you look at it from another lens, because I looked into that a lot, I was almost able to astral project. I was really deep into that at one point, and I think the reason people see things because they're kind of like in between worlds, between our reality
Liminal
and
state. Yeah.
yeah, and so that's why you're seeing things and you're trying to make sense of it from your physical mind, but you're also connected to another realm. And
Right.
but there's this stigma that, oh, this is scientifically, this is called sleep paralysis. But if we were taught different things, if we were taught, hey, when you're in that state, this is the state that you can possibly project yourself out. And we know that the CIA did all
Yeah.
sorts of studies on astral projection. They spied on Russians
Mhm.
using all this,
Right.
and but most of the general public don't know that. So
Of course.
just to make a point was the fact that, like, we're being told all these things to scare us so we don't actually move ourselves forward, but the veil is kind of shifting from that at this point. But did you
Yeah.
ever kind of look into your dad's case? I mean, it seems like there was a lot of people involved. Did you ever find anybody? I don't know if you ever really dug deep into it. Was it documented anywhere? I'm just very curious. I had never heard about that, so it seems like there was a lot of people involved. That kind of like not quite like a Phoenix Lights situation, but
Right, but like a mini flap. Yeah, like
yeah,
so back then, I would say it was probably early 60s, and I think there was like NICAP, and that was before MUFON had existed. So like NICAP would have been the one that had it. And like as far as I can tell, I couldn't find anything. There's ones and twosies of people reporting stuff into the Toledo and Northwest Ohio
hmm,
area through that time. But I mean, like I said, the stigma was so strong that I
hmm,
mean, it would have been like two guys standing shoulder to shoulder looking at it and be like, I didn't see anything.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like
I
you could
gotcha,
literally, this guy would have been like, nope,
yeah,
whatever, dude. Like I'm leaving. Like, like it was that big. So, I mean, I don't doubt that that's probably it. I mean, even to this day, most people don't report anything they see to any of the MUFONs or the NICAP,
yeah, yeah,
any of the, what are they going to do? Or they call the cops just go, yeah, okay, we're not flying around. Or,
yeah.
look at the drone sighting, the flat that happens, that's still
That's still
happening all over the
happening.
place.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. If everybody calls them, they're like, yeah, okay, whatever. I mean, but there's no official reporting structure. I mean, you know, you see some of it in the press when the press picks it up, but most of the time everybody's just,
Yeah.
ignoring it. And is that on purpose? Probably.
Probably, and obviously they just blindly listen to what the news tells them that it,
Yeah. Yeah. Testing
FA,
drones.
FAA approved drones that are coming out of the ocean that nobody, we can't track. No, anyways, but
Yeah.
that's another
Seven
topic if
years.
people want to look into that. So when did you? So you said around 18, you kind of told the
Yeah.
phenomenon or your contact to kind of go away. So at what point? So did it come back? Did you invite it back in?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. And I mean, I think it was always, it wasn't, it was away. I think it was there, but it wasn't like in my face. It wasn't in most of the time. It wasn't an ever pleasant experience. It wasn't like, oh man, this is great, I'm having this good time. It's like I'm scared as shit because whatever's happening is like, not the best of interactions, like the dark black entity that was just like, I don't know, people call them shadow people or whatever, but it was just completely black, a figure of a man moving fast, scary as hell, and then just disappearing. It's like, that's not normal, right? Like it's not a good experience to have. So to me, it was just, more of the spooky side that I didn't want to get into. And I didn't look at it from, possibly being on the other side of it. And it wasn't until, maybe, I started down the journey of kind of probably around the time, maybe even a little bit before, when I became a Freemason. So like 2008, 7, 8, somewhere around in there, that, I kind of get into more of, improving myself, and by, studying more of the different religions of the world, and studying consciousness and meditation, and, all these other modalities that exist to, better yourself. Right. So it was at that time I was like, wow, this is kind of interesting to see how this works, in the grand scheme of things. Right. And then just be more open to everything. And yeah, that's kind of when I got back into it. It was just kind of like, well, yeah, the more I kept researching and being open to the idea of this not being completely malicious, and not being, something that's attacking me, or, whatever, I felt better about opening it up to, being able to do it again. But with barriers, obviously, right? You just
Yeah.
want to just let everything in, but, just kind of, be more aware of everything that's going on, and open to the idea that something could be there. Right.
Gotcha. So you basically becoming a Freemason kind of opened yourself back up to that. Can you just briefly talk about what got you into wanting to pursue that brotherhood, and if you can just kind of briefly, because I think a lot of people, they've heard or know of the Freemasons, but they don't really quite understand what that means. Could you kind of talk about that a little bit, and how you got involved
for sure.
in that?
Yeah, and then definitely there's all the negative connotations of shit in the news all the time, that, we're out there we're worshiping Satan, and, trafficking children, and none of that shit's true, right, at all, which is hilarious. And that's actually one of the reasons I wanted to join Freemasonry. Is I was, the author Jim Marrs, amazing author. I suggest anybody who wants to get deeper in any of these subjects to check out Jim Marrs. He passed away a couple of years ago, but amazing investigative journalist and author. And, I read his book, Rule by Secrecy, which is amazing. And it kind of, it outlines a lot of the control structure, global control structure. And, I mentioned Freemasonry in there. And I owned a restaurant at the time, believe it or not. And there was an older guy that would come in. This is like 2000, I don't know, 5, 6. So, I had free Wi-Fi, which was huge back then, right? Now Wi-Fi is everywhere. But back then, free Wi-Fi was a big deal, right? So had that, and a guy would come in, and he was just day trading. It was really cool. He's an older guy, and he had a Masonic ring, and Roger is his name. And I'm like, hey, Roger, what's going on? He's like, dude, I asked him, so you're Freemason? He's like, yeah. I said, what's going on? He's like, oh man, you'd love it. I go, really? He's like, yeah. He's like, just a bunch of guys, and we get together, and we we have the secret part of it, the ritual and all that stuff, but we do amazing things for charity. We help with community, and we bond, we do all this cool stuff. And I'm like, yeah, cool. So he actually gave me a petition. You have to, like, 2 other guys vouch for you. And then they come out, and they, like, basically ask you a bunch of questions about, basically get your background about, who you are, what you do, and all that stuff. And you can ask them all these questions too, if you want. And so then they go back and they vote on you. And then, like, you're offered, and then you can go through the degrees. There's 3 degrees inside of Blue Lodge. But basically it's, it's basically a way for, it's a way to make men better, and it's a really generic description, but it basically gives you the tools to teach you how to be a better human, a better person in society, a better husband, a better father, a better, a better whatever you are, right? And helping you to be confident, to be able to speak in public, to do these things to basically improve yourself, right? And it's symbology wrapped in allegory, and things like that. So the symbols you see, like square and compass and things like that, it's all symbolism that relates to Freemasonry. That they kind of use symbolism to teach moral, guideposts, to be able to teach you as a lesson, as all lessons, to be able to further yourself and become better than what you were. So for me, it was great. It was, like I said, it was the foundation to be more than I am myself to be able to help and do things that I didn't feel empowered to before.
No, that's incredible.
That,
Thank you for sharing that.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
I think a lot of people could use something like that. Uh,
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it was really huge after World War II. I mean, it was the biggest in America at the time, and it was because a lot of guys came back from war and
yeah,
didn't have that camaraderie, and they didn't have that brotherhood, where they can just be able to be open. And that's the coolest thing with masonry. Like, I can literally be sitting next to the senator of the state right here, and then the guy who's the janitor for the high school is sitting right next to me, and all of us are on the same level. Like, nobody's better than anybody else. All of us are completely the same. Get along, get things in common. We're awesome. We help each other out. Like, it's just amazing that that's how it happens. There's stories of sitting presidents, and some of the presidents were Masons at the time. And there's somebody that's called the Master of the Lodge, and it's just the title they give him. Who's basically the head of the lodge, and he's the guy who runs the whole lodge. But so even when the sitting president comes into the lodge and he's not the master of the lodge, the president still has to do what the master says, because it's just kind of the way it works. So like I said, everybody's on the level. It's not like the president gets special treatment. It's just like, hey, whoever's here, he's here. Like, Dwight's here. We're gonna hang out.
That's cool.
Like
that's cool.
That's like President Eisenhower, right?
Yeah, that's cool. Thank you for that insight into
Yeah.
that world a little bit, because I didn't know it was like that either. So I appreciate you talking about
like
that.
I said, there's a lot of negative connotations because people don't know. I mean, a lot of the things that we keep secret are basically the signs and signals, the stuff, the way that we can tell that we're brothers, right? That we're Masons with each other. Then we don't want to get that out to be public, obviously, because then people would just be faking those things, and then how would you really know that you went through the same experiences and then things that we did? So
yeah,
that's kind of how that all works. But yeah, I've met some of the most amazing dudes ever in my life through that. So
that's really cool.
Sure.
That's really cool.
Yeah,
thank you for that.
For
telling that story. I kind of wanted to go back onto like your contact events. So
sure.
basically, so far you kind of touched up upon, you mostly just not saying just, I don't mean it that way, but like, because obviously it's very intense, but you've seen things. Has there been any communication that's happened?
So yeah, that's interesting. So like the more I started digging into everything, and then like I started my podcast, right? So then I started reaching out to people, and people were reaching out to me, and I was from other experiencers, right? That were having anomalous experiences, people that were, quote unquote psychic, or, had abilities, right? For a remote viewing, like you talked about earlier, right? People can remote viewing and other things like that, or psychic mediums and stuff like that. And, before, it was like, in my mind, it was all just like Miss Cleo, like, girl, leave your husband now. He's cheating. Yeah, call me now. He's cheating on you, girl. Leave him. And I'm like, this is all dumb. But, the more I started actually meeting with people and talking with people and like understanding, there's a guy named Buddy Bolton. He's got a YouTube channel called Alien Protocols, and he was like Psychic Acts and things like that too. And he's a really amazing dude. He was actually an actor for a while too. He played the Riddler in the Batman TV series and stuff. And he's had like an entire lifetime of like psychic things happen to him at an early age, and it's kind of like maternal. It came from his mother's side, and I've talked to him for a while, and I interviewed him, and offline, we talked too, and he kind of gave me a whole bunch of, basically like Zoom, and he's like, this is how you do this. And he's kind of like, everybody can do this. He's like, we can all do it. Everybody can do it. He's like, I can play basketball. You can play basketball. We can shoot a basket and both of us can make a basket, right? But we're not Michael Jordan. Like, some people are just naturally talented, Buddy's one of those guys who's just like naturally talented at like those things, like turning street lights off and shit like that, like, so he and I sat, for a bunch of these Zoom sessions, and he kind of like just told me, taught me some things, and some other people have down the line too. And once you kind of, like I said, once you start opening yourself up to that, you'll be surprised on what you can do. Like, you can have these interactions too. So I have, a lot of the times, I would say up until just very recently, all of the times that I had any experiences, I wasn't looking for it. It just came, like, it came to me, like, the interactions, like either, the knowing or the other things. And some of it is really personal, like from people that I know have passed. And it was like to get a message to somebody else that didn't make any sense to me. Like, it was just like, you have to tell him this. And like, when I relayed the message, it was just spot on. And I was like, how did you know that? I'm like, I have no idea. I still have no idea what that means, but I just, was there to be able to do that, and yeah, I'll talk about this because it just really recently happened to me. Was a friend from a long time ago, back to the radio station days. She had passed a couple of years ago, and I didn't know because people get older, and she had some kind of a cancer and passed. And another friend of ours had reached out and was like, "Hey, shit, she's gone." And I was like, "That sucks," but we talked back and forth, and it was kind of cool that we reconnected. But he watched my podcast, and he's like, you kind of done this stuff before. He's like, can you ask her what I need to do with these pictures? And I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, basically all of her, she had one side of her family that she didn't really want to talk to anymore. And he had like these photographs of her family, like old, like basically all these old photographs, and he didn't want them to go anywhere, but she explicitly told him not to give it to this, this part of her family. And he said, what am I supposed to do? And I'm like, I don't know, dude. So like for days I was just like trying to, basically calm myself, get into a state where I could, like, hey, tell me what to do. Like, they want to know what to do with these pictures. Is there anything you could tell me or give me a sign or whatever like this? And then it's like nothing. And I'm thinking, this is just, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just gonna whatever. And then it was about a week ago. I woke up with a song in my head, and it was a Neil Diamond song. And I'm like, I'm not listening to Neil Diamond. Like, I know who Neil Diamond is, but it's not like something like I'm jamming, and it was very specific. Rosie was, the name. And I just, Steve reached out and I was like, dude, listen, I don't know what this means, but I had this song this morning. And he's like, she always comes to me in songs too. He's like, dude, that's it. So then, like, I guess I found out like her sister or her cousin or something was named Rosie. And it was like, the picture should have went to her. So like, that's like, I don't know what that means. Like I said, I tried, but dude, I don't know. Like, and some people can just straight up tell you, oh yeah, your great grandfather says you're doing great. You should really take that job and don't buy the red car and get, it's like, dude, I don't have that, but I think we all can do it, honestly. Really.
Yeah. So it's interesting the way you're talking about it, because my wife has similar experiences, and she describes it as kind of, it just comes to her. It's like this knowing, but she knows it's not her, right?
Yeah,
she knows it's not coming from her. And it's things that she normally wouldn't say or do, or, and, she's multiple times, many times, and she's kind of digging into it more and trying to find her, kind of strengthening herself. She's practicing more, kind of connecting with nature more and trying to open herself up more. But like, it's almost like a download that kind of comes in, and then you're just like, oh, okay. And then I'm not sure what to do with this. And then, you just kind of follow your intuition and where it's guiding you. And then you're just like surprised what comes from it. But then, people are like, oh, that's a coincidence and all that stuff. But, I don't believe it's that way. So it's just interesting, you, my wife, I've heard other people talk similarly. And it's like, after a while, like, enough people are saying the same things. It's, they're not all crazy. Like, there's something going on here, so.
Right. That's like the biggest thing is just fighting the stigma, and that was like one of the big deals, writing the book too, was like, I've had all these experiences, and like I said, like everything I'm telling you is in the book, except for this, some of that last one that just happened. But like, it wouldn't make any sense. Like, and when we have conversations like this, people are interested, it's cool. But until I really put it all down in words and then kind of followed it and got to a place where it made, like, I tried to put it all together. I have like over 400 endnotes. So I came from it in the spot of, like, if I just, from a skeptic's point of view too, right? So I do information security for a living. So I'm skeptical as it is, right? Like I go through the looking for holes and looking for weaknesses in systems and looking for how control works, right? And like control structures are, and I can see that it's failing. If a society moves forward, it's people are, like you're saying, your wife, other people are having experiences, and nobody's really to the point now where it's being shunned as much as it is. So my idea to get everything I could to wrap it around actual hard researchable verifiable facts, right? So it's like, when I'm saying these things, it's not like me just making shit up. You can literally go and look this up. Oh, like we were talking about, oh, here's the CIA document where they studied psi phenomena for 40 years, and here's all the programs, and here's the people that were in them, and here's the things that are still ongoing that's classified, and here's where this turned into, and did they turn it into technology? Yeah. Did they hide that technology for 30 years? Sure. Are they still doing it? Yeah. And here, like I mapped it all out because I'm like, nobody's going to believe you if you just say this. So like,
Mm-hmm.
give them the receipts. So I did that, and that's really took me the longest amount of time because it does kind of you do get to the point where you sound like a raving lunatic when you're just looking at this whole big picture. But I tried to do a really good job of just narrowing it all down to kind of look at the esoteric lineage, look at the infrastructure, look at the experiencers. We're not victims, right? And we're data sources, and that's what that really got me. It really kind of put a little bit of fire in my ass to get this out there. Was what I started finding, and personally, not personally myself, but people that I've spoken with that have had experiences, experiencer, and they've had their DNA taken, and they're not telling them what they're doing with their DNA, and they're using the DNA to basically weaponize their psychic abilities and use it for profit, really.
Well,
To what one of the theories is super soldiers, right? To be
mm-hmm.
able to turn on psychic ability in people or turn
Yeah.
it off. That's the other part too.
Yeah.
The other part is the other side. It's like, okay, so we can spray this in the air and then everybody's psychic abilities is turned off,
Yeah.
right? So then we don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
Right.
That's interesting.
So
Yeah.
yeah. So that was a big
Before we
deal.
kind of dive into more stuff like that, because I'm really curious about that. I
Sure.
just want to say, so like, what you're doing is extremely important because we need people like that to do all that research and to kind of document all that stuff. But I mean, you got, I've dug a lot into like, obviously if you look into like near death experiences, people have documented that stuff. Or like, I'm really,
Yeah.
one of my favorite books is Journey of Souls by Michael Newton.
Mhm.
And I don't know if you read it, but he was a hypnotherapist, and he started, kind of sort of by accident, he realized he could tap into the conscious part of our mind where we're in past lives, and where we go after we die, and our return back here and all that stuff. And he documented all that and wrote it in a book, all his sessions that he had. And then you know now there's so many practitioners that practice the same thing and do the same thing, that's all documented. And you got people like Dolores Cannon, completely separate from Michael Newton, and she did the exact same thing and got
Right.
basically the exact same kind of information that he did. And he wrote that book many years before she started coming out with her stuff. So they weren't even related in any sense, and they're saying the same things, and what you're doing is basically the same thing. Like, we need people to kind of start that conversation, to document this stuff, because you don't know where that's going to get us, 10 years from now, right? They're going
Right.
to be looking back at your book and be like, oh my God, there's information here, because now this stuff is coming out more, and all this stuff, kind of sort of like the New York Times article, right? That kind of opened the
Right.
door. A lot of people, in the UFO community, they were like, oh yeah, we've been knowing about this stuff forever. But now, you got people, even today, Matt Gates just
Yeah.
was on a podcast talking about, um, there's a breeding program. A lot of people within the community are probably not that surprised at it, right?
Mhm. Right.
But it's not being talked about openly by people within Congress and all this stuff. So like the stigma is kind of shifting. And
Yeah.
how so what you were experiencing is sounds like a lot of paranormal stuff. How did you connect that into the overall phenomenon and ufology?
It's see, like that's the thing. It's one. It's so hard to see because it's not random. It's like
Mm-hmm.
and it's been siloed like that for like I said, on purpose. Because if you start getting people to understand that they're having one experience, and all of that experience is centered around consciousness, I mean, that's where you're going to start to see where the control mechanism gets tight, right? Where they don't want you to understand that you're stronger than you ever imagined, you're more powerful than that you can connect with consciousness, you can go outside and have a meditative experience and ask these things to come down, and they will, and interact with you. What is that, right? I mean, they could be doing that to protect us, they could be doing that to keep us from knowing our own power, but I don't know. I think that for me, the connection was that if I can have this experience like we were talking about, the psychic experience where you're asking for information or you have information coming to you, and then you can still go outside and use kind of the same modality as just sitting quiet, meditating, clearing your thoughts, projecting your thoughts out there. Say, hey, I'm asking for a sign. I'm asking for something. We show yourself, and then this ball of light shows up in the sky. Right. So what is that? Right. It's not a black figure that's running through the hallway, right? But it's the same kind of experience, the same kind of emotion, your same interaction with your own consciousness that's happening, right? So is it?
Mhm.
And to me, it's the same. Like you're talking about near the experiences. I did a interview with Dr. Jeffrey Long, another a great. He's a radiologist oncologist, so he just cancer physician, but he's written like 3 or 4 books that he's been studying. He's got a organization called NERDERF, which is like the near death experiences organization. He's got surveys he's had for, oh man, it's over 30 years now, of people that are near death experiencers from all walks of life, all religions, all ages, from all over the planet. And he's correlated the data. It basically says, like you were saying, it's the same thing. Everybody's the same shared experience. When you die, you pass into a place that's a billion times better than what you're here. You're surrounded by your loved ones. It's more real and more, beautiful and warming and welcome and loving than anything that you've ever had on earth. And then that you're going to die, and you reach this realm, and it's going to be great. And people that come back always have the same, type of story, whether you're Hindu, Muslim, Buddhist, Christian, it's still having the same type of shared experience all over the globe. And it's amazing to see that happens. And it's really interesting to see the correlation too of people that do come back and that do have those experiences, that they all will in turn have experiences with UFOs, with ghosts, with other entities, with the synchronicities, with, being able to, interact with consciousness on a different, deeper level as well. And that's interesting. It's a huge correlation there too, right? That
Yeah.
people overlook. It's interesting to see that Robert Bigelow, who's, for the UFO, people are in for UFOs. I mean, I'm sure you've heard the name, but I think he's spent more money than any one person on the planet has spent in the research of ufology. As a personal effort. He owned Skinwalker Ranch. He had NIDS. He had all these amazing, massive programs, spending millions and millions of dollars. And at one point, very recently, he decided to just stop all the UFO research, and all he's doing is consciousness research and life after death. Like, that's literally all he's done. I mean, Dr. Long won. He was one of the runner-ups for. He had a contest that Bigelow did. It was like, I don't know how many billions of dollars he put out, was for the best evidence of life surviving death. And Dr. Jeffrey Mishlove actually won that contest for like all this data, empirical data. Like, and he's got like a bound set of books. Bigelow put out like a 5-volume set of books from all of the people that wrote in these amazing research papers. And Bigelow's in every university in the world. And like, there's just a massive set of information here, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he's gone down that entire rabbit hole. So at some point, Bigelow found the correlation between lights in the sky, UFOs, and life after death, right? But nobody's talking about it. It's really kind of hidden right now, and still everybody really doesn't want to really talk about it, because that opens a big can of worms too. It's
yeah. You're bringing up some really good points. The first one I wanted to talk about was, you brought up the orbs in the sky, right? And you're kind of, is not really any different than what you're experiencing, right? It's the same thing, but what you're experiencing is kind of put to the side, like it's a paranormal type of thing, while people like Chris Bledsoe, he's got a huge following, and
right.
he's shown even on TV. He was like beyond Skinwalker Ranch. They did this whole study. He was able to get orbs to come out. He has this massive following, and
Stephen Greer does the same thing with CE5, and
yeah, exactly, right, right.
Yeah.
So, and what you're experiencing, in my mind, is the exact same thing. You're just tapping into another part of the phenomenon, but it kind of gets pushed aside now. Like, it's it's not as prevalent as, because UFOs are kind of more the hot topic now, and people are starting to see the reality behind that now. But it they shouldn't be brushing your stuff off either, because I think it's all one and the same as well.
Right.
So I kind of just wanted to make that point, and then the other point is, if you're interested in looking into, like, near death experiences, or because you're kind of falling into that place where you're seeing things, and and all that. I had a interview with a Lives Between Lives practitioner who was actually trained by Michael Newton, who wrote the book that I mentioned earlier, Journey of
Hmm.
Souls. And
Hmm.
I've had a session with him as well.
Hmm.
And he gets you into hypnotherapy, and you go into either past lives or the life where we go to in the afterlife and your
Oh, okay.
experience. And it's a real experience. When you go through it, it's a real experience. And if you're interested, I can put you in touch with him
Sure. Yeah,
if that's
that's
something
rad.
you really want to research and go down a rabbit hole. It's not, I wouldn't say it's a rabbit hole because it's real.
Hmm.
I can definitely put you in touch with him. But um,
Yeah, that's cool.
yeah. So, anyways, you bring up some really good points, and I think for Robert Bigelow, it's also to some degree, he's getting older, so I think he's,
Hmm. Of
there's, we all have that feeling,
course.
we're kind of inching towards something, and I
Hmm.
think we all want to know the truth, but I had that same feeling for many years. I had this feeling like I was just any moment I could just die, like my heart can just stop, right? And I had this fear, and I was scared of it, and it was almost like a daily occurrence. And but then when I reached out to this practitioner, I looked into all this stuff, and then I had my session. I'm not scared anymore because what I experienced was real. My consciousness went somewhere. I had this real emotional experience that I keep with me all the time. So, these are real experiences, and people even brush off things like hypnotherapy and all this stuff because they think you know, the practitioners are putting something in your head, but that's not how it is, and
Right.
you're just tapping into a part of your consciousness that most people, we keep locked away. People like
Of course.
yourself or my wife, or other experiencers, that part that's locked away is not, that door is cracked open.
Right. Right.
And that's what you're experiencing. I think at some point that door was cracked open for you, and it's part of you now. um,
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's probably, I mean, there's been many people writing books about it and research, and my research only goes so deep, and I don't really touched on it. I didn't touch on it significantly in the book, but there's definitely no, I did. I guess I did a little bit, but there's definitely a lineage thing that's involved in DNA. I think that's connected to experiences, and they were able to actually do a lot of study. Dr. Dean Radin was able to trace. I think it's like the chromosome 7. I think is what they've been able to come up with. Or somehow that what if you have that is something with that chromosome. And don't forgive me because I can't eloquently speak about it. But basically, they figured out there's a biological factor that's from the mother's side, from mitochondrial DNA. So it kind of goes from the mother's lineage, that people with these experiences, people that are psychic or whatever you want to call it, it kind of goes through the mother's side of the genes, where you've had it, and it's kind of like part of your DNA.
mm-hmm,
You've inherited it as you go on. So it's interesting to see that it's a real kind of verifiable part,
mm-hmm.
at least through empirical science. Anyway, to say that, yeah, that, well, if your great grandmother was able to tell the future, and then your mother, and then and then how that all works out. So it's
Yeah.
interesting to see how that works.
Yeah, well, that's really interesting, the DNA part of that, because I've always had this. I remember I don't know where this quote came from, or somebody talked about it. Like women are basically a portal from the other. That's how they're able to, they receive life and souls from the other side. They're used as a portal, and in a sense, they're kind of giving that DNA on. So it's kind of interesting. It's just, but
Yeah, it's real.
yeah, that's really interesting. So I kind of also wanted to talk to you about, because you're on UFO Twitter probably about as much as I am, probably even more. Um,
Yeah.
uh,
Unfortunately.
and yeah, because I'm looking at like I'm kind of like a master of none kind of situation. Like I kind
Yeah.
of dabble with a bunch of different things,
Yeah.
but so where do you think we are headed towards like an event? Because I feel like I'm seeing breadcrumbs everywhere. Obviously you got people like Chris Bledsoe that had,
Yeah.
that mentioned things. There seems like things in the news are kind of escalating with things. They just found a second Sphinx, which kind of
Mhm.
correlates a little bit to Chris Bledsoe saying that the new knowledge is coming from Egypt. Um, you know, So anyways, there's a lot of breadcrumbs, and I'm seeing things are possible. Even if you look into like religious, people put the religious part into it, and they think there's, something happening. Do you think we're on our way towards something like that, a shift, a change, a knowledge?
Yeah, I mean, I think I do, but I don't think that's. I mean, I probably catch shit for this, but I don't think that there's like one person or group or religion or anything that's going to be the way. I think it's really happening. I think it's happening at a global level, but I think it's happening on an individual basis. I think it's happening to, like we were just talking about, where we're all like collectively waking up, in a sense, right? Where we're not easily fooled as we were before, right? We have more wherewithal to be intuitive, to realize these gifts are real, realize these things in the sky we're seeing are not drones or whatever their bullshit they're not weather balloons, right? They're not what they're telling us, that they've been telling us for 80 years, that we are more powerful than they give us credit for, and that we can do these things. And I think that as that happens, the collective consciousness, I guess if you want to call that, like whatever Young kind of labeled that, I think that as a whole, like if once enough people, kind of like the 100 monkey effect, right? It's like when enough people have these experiences, and they realize that these things are real, and they're interacting with us. I think that as a globe, as like our collective consciousness, I think is probably in that phase where we're kind of raising up a bit, so that we are more knowledgeable. We can see these things that are happening. We can see the lights in the sky. We can interact with something that maybe is part of nature, that it's just always been here with us, but now we're just open to it, right?
Yeah.
Maybe it's not some alien from Alpha Centauri. Maybe it's something that's lived with us forever, that we call angels or demons or whatever the hell you want to call it. But maybe that's something that's part of us. And I think we're kind of raising, and this is just my theory, I think we're just kind of raising up to the point where we can do that. And I think the more of us that do it, the more, because they like, the rising tide raises all boats. I think that's kind of where we're at.
Yeah. Yeah. No, yeah, good take, good point. I agree with you on everything. You brought up the angels and demons thing. I'm really kind of annoyed with the narrative that's out there with that, because it's like everybody's trying to explain it with this whole angels and demons, and it puts this religious undertone under it, and just
it's hard.
it's hard. Yeah, it is hard. Go ahead.
It's hard. No. I think it's. I don't say it. I can't say that it's wrong either. I mean, not in whatever context, right? I mean, like, my angel is your demon, your demon's my angel, but it's somebody else's UFO. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, could it be, a stoplight? I mean, who knows? Like,
Yeah.
I think it's all like in perception. I mean, I've researched a lot of people that like literally have had experiences, and I've been, in these experiences too, where I'm standing next to somebody, like I said, shoulder to shoulder, and I'm seeing something that's completely different than what you're seeing. Yeah, but we're all experiencing something. There's a light in the sky, and to me, it's this orange ball that's amazing and it's throbbing, and it's beautiful, and then to you, it's something that's scaring the shit out of you, right, or whatever, right? Or you have a different emotional response, or even visual response, or and I think it's kind of at play how everybody's consciousness or everybody's perception is completely different, where we're not kind of all on the same wavelength, where like I said, you could look at it as, oh my God, it's an angel. But to me, it's a ship, like,
Yeah.
So I think about it in those terms, where they're not necessarily, I mean, and I could be wrong, but maybe they are just like throwing the Bible on top of it, trying to clamp it down to like, oh, it's the Bible and it's these things. But I mean, to me, it's like, I think it's the same thing. We're describing it differently.
So you're making an extremely good point, because obviously our own personal experiences throughout our life kind of shape our beliefs, right? So you're absolutely right. Two different people can see two different things. But at the end of the day, we're all just trying to describe something we don't understand, right?
Exactly.
But I think what I just don't like, in a sense, is the fact that it's pushed off in the narrative to the masses, instead of people trying to kind of just learn to understand. Yeah. And that to me feels like there's a narrative being pushed. And, it might be angels or demons, right? I have no idea. It could be aliens. I have no idea. I just know in my mind, it just doesn't make sense for demons to need to fly around in UFOs. But like you said, I might see a UFO while another person might see something else. So I think
Right.
it's just more about the narrative that I feel like is being pushed, rather than just saying, there's these things that are happening that we don't really fully understand. And that's basically where I feel like it should be at, rather than like putting an idea out there for people that haven't
Hmm.
experienced anything to just take. And now when they do see something, they'll just be like, well, that's a demon, rather than, really just going with their own personal experience. So that's just kind of where I'm at with that.
And that does make sense. I mean, it seems like they're slapping the dogma on top of it. And to me, when I look at, like I said, we talk about control systems, right? I mean, that's kind of why the name of the book, Contact and Control, is that people have these contact experiences, and then the control mechanism comes out and it gets a hold of you. Like they want to figure out, like the military intelligence, whatever you want to call them, right? The government, whoever that world doesn't have these experiences, and what they do is they latch on to, like the Chris Bledsoes, they latch on to the people that have experiences. They latch on to the experiencers because they want to data mine and get as much information about what's going on, because they know what's real, they know what's happening, and they try to control it, right? And figure out for themselves. They've even said, like, they don't talk to us, they talk to you, so we're going to figure out what they want,
Yeah.
so like in that regard, to me, like when you're saying, like, and you hear the narrative from like the vice president and other people that are coming out and saying, oh yeah, I think they're demons or they're angels or whatever like that, you got to think a couple steps ahead of that, to the either the two levels. You can look at it from the disinformation perspective, where there's somebody that's briefing them and giving them that information from a level to just distill disinformation into society. So you have somebody that really knows what's going on, but they're gonna, like, we're just gonna go tell Vance that it's angels. Yeah. So
Yeah.
then he's
Yeah.
going out, it's like, it's a demon, right? And then, or Luna or somebody comes out there and like, oh, it's angels and demons. Like, so like, are these people just gaslighting the shit out of the politicians just so that they're just pushing them off the trail because they really know it's some interdimensional shape shifting, whatever or something, right? So like, we'll tell them it's angels, it'll keep them busy. And it's the same thing with that we talked about the Robinson panel. It's the same thing again, right? Are they doing that? Or do the people that are briefing these people have the information to know what these things are? And the only way they can possibly describe it to the politicians, for them to make sense to the politicians, is to explain it in a framework of something they're aware of, which is angels, right?
That's
To
true.
me, that means looking at it from that perspective. Or
Yeah.
those people that are really super uber crazy religious and they're hell bent and that's all they can see. Those people
Yeah.
that are,
That's
you know
true
what I mean?
too.
Like that could be it either, right? And it could be all the above.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. I think, we just hope that we could get more from our leaders in that sense, right? That they're
Oh,
able
you shouldn't
to,
hope for that.
yeah, but we are where we are, and that's we're making do. But
Yeah,
I think I just want people to understand that just no matter what you hear, just remember, it's like you mentioned earlier. This is still a personal experience,
of
whatever's
course.
happening, right? Because I feel like something's happening. I do think we're getting to a place where you know more of the masses will find out more things, and there's going to be a
Yeah,
lot of things that are going to happen that are going to confuse a lot of people, and even people like you or me that are constantly researching things. We have to even keep an open mind, because there's going to
right.
be something that may happen that might confuse us, and it still challenge our open-mindedness,
Of course.
because I would think you're an extremely open-minded person just based off of the experiences that you have, right? But there could be still something that comes up that will even challenge that. And that's why when I talk to people like yourself, I've had an interview with Mark, Christopher Lee, and John Stewart. Even I know John Stewart gets a lot of flack, but he's just one part of it too. He's trying to do his little part that he feels,
Right,
that is true to him. But like, we need to all stick together. We need to all support each other. And that's the
right.
part that I think that frustrates me the most when you look into, you know, especially UFO X, a lot,
Hmm.
everyone is like on each other. And we should all be supporting each other, because we're all trying to figure out what the truth is. We're all trying to understand what's going on. Nobody has the answers. None of us know. And people
Yeah,
that claim to know,
I don't
it's
know.
not, nobody knows anything,
Right.
and they just recently, I don't know, a few weeks ago, I don't know if you saw that story that scientists like was able to grow brain cells in a petri dish, and they were able
Mhm.
to play Doom,
Yeah, yeah.
and like
That's been
that.
going on for a long time, though, man. That's some kind of that's interesting. So there's a I did a whole chapter in the book that's pretty much, yeah. That's the scary part, man. So there's a reoccurring thing that intersects with the whole ufology and everything else in this whole thing, and it's I call it like the 30-year rule, right? And that's the name of the chapter in the book. And basically, what that is that everything like this iPhone that you have in your pocket is 30 years old, right? Like this is
Yeah,
30 years old.
yeah,
The coolest shit that just came out is
it's
30 years
been out.
old.
Yeah,
And I have like a proven track record. I have so many examples and personal experiences and, actual evidence to show you that's happened. And yeah, so that wet hardware thing they call it, right? So they've been able to use other cells to be able to use in networking equipment since the 70s, right? It's good to know it can function just like brain cells work, but faster. And you don't have it doesn't take much power as everything else, and you have to feed it minuscule things, but that's been going on for a really long time, unfortunately, right? So like all the things you're seeing out, like, oh my god, AI is so
yeah,
amazing, and quantum computers is like, yeah, dude.
yeah,
Think about 30 years ago when they hooked AI up to a quantum computer, right?
yeah,
30 years ago, and what we're like, then you're
yeah,
playing with it. And you're talking to chatbots about it now, right?
yeah,
Like so when you look at that, and there's a lot of things that intersect with the whole ufology and the consciousness research and technology that's either reverse engineered, or somebody's giving us this information, or something is giving us information. We're using it to build these technologies, and then we're classifying them, and then we're keeping them hidden, and we're keeping them secret, and then we're possibly blaming, like we've always heard, like, oh yeah, it's like that's a UFO, but it's really an advanced technology, and that
yeah,
happens as well. So it's this murky pool of shit. And like you said, like on X, or UFO Twitter, all of that. I mean, there's just paid people that are just paid to be shit starters, and to harass people and put people down and like dox people, and that's just part. That's like there's a whole unit of people that's all they get paid to do.
mm-hmm.
And there's bots that do it as well, right? There's bots that are these AI bots that you think you're talking to somebody that's not even a human. Most of them are that. And there's a lot of them that there's handfuls of people that are just managing bots that are doing
Yeah,
that. They're
yeah,
just destroying people, that are just going after people, and all those things. So you see that, and that's becoming like that curve is like this, man. That's just happening
yeah,
at exponential level now. So it's part of the whole thing, part of the disinformation, part of the so dissent, just to
mm-hmm.
throw enough shit out there that nobody knows what anything is, and everybody
Yeah,
just goes. Eventually, after dude, I've been like honestly, I've been doing this for like 30 years or more, like my whole life, and at some point you just go, fuck it. Like there's just
yeah,
you just can't, you just got to kind of walk away for a minute, because
yeah,
you're like it's literally we're at the same place I've been 20
yeah,
years ago. It's just you see
yeah,
the cycle, It's like
yeah,
there's Grant Cameron comes out and talks about a UFO messiah. They'll put somebody out there that's gonna be the UFO messiah, and they'll be like,
mm-hmm.
yeah, we're gonna do a disclosure, and
Yeah.
then like 20 years later, it's like, yeah, we're gonna.
Yeah. Well, you're making really good points, which really emphasizes the point that we really don't know anything, because by the time we see it in the news or on social media, like you said, it's been around for 30 years.
30
We're just
years,
now being allowed to see it.
exactly.
So that's a really good point. But that it even emphasizes the fact even more that, like, hey, all these people that claim to know all this stuff, you're just now finding things out. You're just and you're just scratching the surface. Even the people like yourself, you've been doing this, like you said, for 30 years, but you know you're doing deep research and only discovering things that has been hidden for a long time, and it's still looked at like taboo. um
Yeah, of
but
course.
that even the more reason why people like yourself should be supported and not pushed aside. But like you said, there's a lot of disinformation agents. There's people on there that are get a lot of crap.
Mhm.
Even people like Ashton Forbes, he gets a lot of crap. I see a lot of people being really, mean to him, but he puts a lot of effort and a lot of passion into trying to do some of the research that he does. And he might not be 100% on everything, but he could be 100% on 10% of it, but it's being brushed aside because people think that, he might be a quack or whatever the case is, right? And, sometimes you just have to listen and see what people have to offer, and see if they hold part of the puzzle, and they might, and you might just be overlooking it because you're just so stuck to your own beliefs, you know. So
Bias. Yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
definitely. And then, like I said, I have a wide net. Like I like to soak it all in and just kind of keep it in different orbits to see if it, my whole thing is just to kind of see if it has unintended correlations, where it's
yeah,
like, okay, well, heard this thing from somebody that was a completely unrelated correlation to this other thing. It's like, well, maybe there's a kernel of truth there, right? I mean,
yeah,
maybe the other shit, like you said, 95% of the other shit's just garbage, but maybe that, that 5%
yeah,
connects to a dot somewhere. And,
yeah,
but some of this stuff is just on purpose, completely just
yeah.
wild to the point where you're like, yeah, and you can't, you can't even resonate with it. You're like,
No,
wow.
I
Yeah,
know
some
it's
some of
hard.
it is, but at the same time, it's like, well,
Yeah. Well, social
I
media makes it very hard because then you got a lot of people that will just take a little bit of information and then you know, they'll just throw stuff out there just to get engagement or
yeah,
breaking
right,
news, this is
clicks.
going on, but they don't know anything. And the amount of fear mongering that's going on there frustrates me a lot because it works, you know, I know it's probably meant to be this way, and
Mhm.
it screws up the global consciousness in some degree, right?
Well,
Because
that's probably by design as well. Yeah,
yeah,
for
exactly,
sure.
and that's why more people need to be positive and support each other because there's the other side that's trying to push us into fear and negativity,
Yeah,
and we're all individually and collectively part of a spiritual war in my opinion, and
sure.
we have to push back against that fear, and we have to push back against that negativity, and come from a different place and help each other out, and and not just brush people aside. So and that's kind of what I am trying to do with my podcast to some degree, and get people to kind of support each other and understand that everybody has something to offer. Everybody has a kernel of truth and their truth, and it's all valuable because we're all part of the same thing. We're all part of the same phenomenon, whatever
Hmm.
it is that is happening. And I just wanted to make sure that I mentioned that.
Oh,
um
for sure, man.
yeah,
That's good. Thank you for doing that. Because I
yeah,
mean, that's it's not a lot of people. I mean, a lot of people get set in their own modalities, and that's all they can open
yeah,
their spectrum to. That's all
yeah,
they can take in. So it's kind of interesting to bring it all in to look at it, come at with from an empathetic point of view. At
yeah,
least to say, like you said, I mean, you like somebody could completely believe that whatever happened to them, that's their complete total belief, and
yeah,
if they believe it, then there's nothing you can say to sway them, right?
yeah,
You didn't have that experience, so
yeah,
it's interesting to soak it all in. But yeah,
yeah,
no, thanks for doing that, man. And letting people just talk,
yeah,
and share their experiences is a huge deal.
yeah.
Experiences
Thank you.
keeping everybody together.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Building a community where people are okay to talk. Right?
Yeah, yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Just want to briefly, if you want you to kind of, if you can just talk about your book or where people can purchase it
Oh yeah,
if they're interested. Where can
yeah.
they get your book?
So it's like coming out the 28th. So February 28th. It's going to be hardcover, paperback, Kindle. It's going to be on Amazon. So you go to Amazon. It's going to be all three things there. It's going to be there. I'm gonna do like a limited like signed number release too. So like autographed. I think we're gonna do like 50 and just 1 through 50. So limited run and personalized whatever. We're gonna do that beginning too, and then I'm gonna be doing some. I think we're gonna have like a launch party and probably gonna do that streaming and probably do a couple signings and stuff like that too around and just get it out there. And like honestly, man, I'm not trying to make money. I'm not trying to nobody makes any money selling books. So, I really wanted to get it out there, and I really wanted it to be something that people can like rally around as far as like know that you're not alone, know that you're not crazy, know that these experiences are real, that they're documented, that like you're not alone, and this is happening. Like feel like I was saying, like this is the back of this book. This section right here is all resources. That's all legit and notes. Just go. That's everything that I'm not making any of that shit up. Right. That's all there. You can go look up every single one of those end notes and you know, like I said, I just really want people to like figure out that there's way more to this that's going on. You're not alone. Your experiences are valid, and there's just this giant system that's been built to try to like suppress everything that's happening, and to realize that you're more powerful than you know, and you can do things that you can imagine in that community is very important. So that's what I really wanted to try to do, and I wanted to get into a cohesive format to get everybody out to. And like I said, I mean, just give it to your friends, your neighbors, your people, people that may have not had the experiences, people that come from it from the scientific mindset. They're like, I can't believe this, and then also people that are into it and into the other side, because I think I tried to bridge that gap between the two.
Yeah.
And leave room for more discussion, for everybody to kind of be open and be cool with it. So
awesome. Thank you. I will definitely make sure that I'm going to pick me up a copy of it when it comes out on the 28th, you said?
Yeah. So it's 28th of April 28th. Okay. And so we get it out. I'll send you a copy. I'll grab it for you.
Oh, I really appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you.
Sure.
I love it. Yeah. I'm looking forward to that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure, man. No, thank you. Keep doing what you're doing, man. Like, seriously, I mean, that's like, I end the book basically the same way. As like, if we don't come together as a community and like, find the people like that had these experiences and shared experiences and have that community, away from all the crazy bullshit that we're talking about on Twitter and all that stuff, but people that are really experiencers and people that are, that genuinely care and have experiences. I think that's the main thing, is to have that community of people that I can talk to you about things that, you're not going to go, oh man, that guy's off his meds, right? Like you can know because you've had these experiences yourself and you can relate. And I think that's massive. I think that's really needed right now for sure. So.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with that. And you're doing your part in that. I think all these things are set in place to separate us, but we are truly social beings. We're all meant to be connected, and if we look past that and not let all these things that are meant to separate us, we are also supposed to connect with each other. And so I really appreciate you doing your part of that, and I think anybody that's listening out there, please support Jon, because he's trying to do his part, and just, even if, there's going to be somebody out there that's experiencing what you're experiencing, and, they might be having a really hard time in life, but they're going to read your book and they're going to feel like I'm not alone in this. There are other people that are experiencing what I'm experiencing. And you can't put a price on anything like that.
Yeah, for sure. So now you're not alone and that you're okay. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. If anybody wanted to follow you on social media or anything, where can they go?
Yeah. So on X, it's just Jon Majerowski. I know it's hard to spell, but you'll figure it out. And
I'll make sure to put it on the video. So.
Oh yeah, cool. Thanks. And then I got a podcast. It's on all the podcast platforms and YouTube. It's UFOs on the Level. So it's UFOs on the Level is the name of the podcast. And like I said, X. And then the website is contactandcontrol.com. So they can go there, it'll link you to the book, and it'll be where we're doing the numbered copies. And sign up for the newsletter. I won't spam you. I'll just kind of let you know some stuff's happening, and I promise I won't destroy you with that shit. But contactandcontrol.com. That's an easy way to find me too, and all the links are on there. So
I'll make sure to link everything on my YouTube. So if anybody's interested, look at the YouTube links below. I know it's late, so I appreciate you taking the time to, to come talk to me. I'm still early. I'm kind of coming in green, like I said, into this whole podcast game. But I really appreciate anybody that comes on and talks to me. People like yourself that have been around this for a while. So I just thank you for taking time out to talk to me.
Of course, dude. I mean, I was there too, right? I mean, not so long ago, I was there too, and like I always made it a note that I was going to help any way I can too. Just like James helped me, just like anybody that's interested, man, and that has a glimmer of, interest in the topic and, cares to do it in an amazing light and, bring up the consciousness. Dude, it's very appreciated. And of course, man, if I can help you in any way, let me know, man. I'm here for you.
I appreciate it. And we'll keep in touch, and I'll remind you about that book.
Oh, dude. Yeah. Seriously, man. Let me know. Email me your address. I'll get it for you for sure.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, man. Thank you.
All right. Well, keep in touch, man. I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, dude. Yeah.